My name's Jim Serpico, and this... Should I start with my name, or should I start with this is Bread for the People? Do you like it like this? Welcome to Bread, or do you like it like this? Welcome. Ready? Welcome to Bread for the People. Mine... Is there a script? Welcome to Bread for the People. I'm Jim Serpico. Today we have a special guest all the way from Minot, North Dakota. I was going through my deep dives on Instagram and also through a list on the Bakers Guild of America, which I think is where I heard of Prairie Sky Breads. And I tracked down the owner, Travis Gerjets, and he's here with me today. He's the founder and co-owner of Prairie Sky Breads from Minot, North Dakota. Please welcome Travis.
Hey, thanks, Jim, for having me. This is great.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you taking the time after presumably a long morning, although today's Monday, so I'm not quite sure of your schedule.
It's my day off. And I actually haven't been doing even that much bakery work today, so it maybe is actually a day off, which is great.
It's good to clear your head a little bit, right?
It's great, yeah. I mean, we all need it, and unfortunately, in this business, there's just some weeks you don't get it, and you feel that later on. But today's one of those good days where I get to just take a break.
So what I'm curious to hear about and learn about today is the evolution of how you started at farmers markets. I know that you were inspired by, I believe, your grandmother. And
yeah.
That always stayed with you, but you took that passion and I'm assuming what was a hobby and started doing farmers markets alone. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the start. Is a farmers market in Minot, and it's kind of grown from there. We started in 2014, and now here we are with a brick and mortar location and making a lot more bread than we started out making.
So paint a picture of a farmers market in Minot for me. I know I'm in Long Island, New York. I'm assuming it's way more populated than Minot, but maybe not. Are the farmers markets located in the downtown area or in a more rural location?
We got two farmers markets in Minot, and the one that we're usually showing up at, we're in a park, not far from the downtown area, but not right downtown. Got a good number of vendors.
What is a good number of vendors?
Oh, let's see. I'd say we got, we're between 20 and 40, depending on what time of the season we're at. Yeah. So we're pretty far north. So there's a lot of especially the produce people that we might be pretty thin at the beginning of the season. Some folks are only bringing certain things, watermelons or sweet corn or something. So, when we hit that late July, August, then we might have 40 vendors, and things are really, really busy down at the park. But and actually when we moved, so I'm originally from the Twin Cities, Minnesota. And my wife's from up in this area. So when we moved to Minot in 2013, I didn't know anybody.
Let me ask you a question. Did it go like this? Let's find someplace even colder than the Twin Cities.
Yeah, I mean, we joke about it. Even Minnesota, we're pretty far north. We got tough winters, and we move farther north. We are not that far from the Canadian border, and it's a different world out here. And the prairies, and that really was inspiring to me, coming from lakes and woods in Minnesota. Prairie Sky Breads, it's where we got the name from. And this place grows on you. I have no reservations about moving to this part of the world. But when I moved here, I didn't know anybody. And we had some dreams about maybe, doing some produce stuff. And I wanted to get involved in farmers market. And at that point, when we had moved, it was too late for us to get a garden in the ground and do anything really with farmers market. There was a market manager at the time. He was looking for some more help. He had me jump in. I was going to help him for the season. But early on, at the farmers markets, everybody's kind of got the same things. We've got some like early greens, some spring onions, maybe some turnips, radishes, And so he was asking, is there anything that you can do to kind of make our stand pop out as produce growers? And I said, well, I can do a little bit of baking. Up to that point, I was mostly a bread eater. I loved eating bread, and especially my grandmother's bread, Nana. There wasn't any family gathering that we had that, we didn't have Nana's rolls or dinner rolls. Maybe one of her pies, just her breads. She was a great baker, and it's what my mom and her siblings grew up eating, was all this fresh homemade stuff. And before we moved to Minot, my wife and I were doing some traveling, and we popped in. We're volunteering at this soup kitchen in Liverpool, England, of all places. That's a whole nother story of how we got there. But
wow,
one of the things that they were doing at this soup kitchen is having people come in before the meal and bake bread together as a community. It was one part like teaching and instruction, but one part like getting all these different people from the community, well-to-do people, unhomed people, all kinds of folks together in one spot doing this thing together. It was really cool. It was really cool.
What a great way to bring the community together.
Yeah, it was really inspiring. I think their philosophy, their mission, even some of their little taglines, they really stuck with me, especially as we're kind of getting the bakery off the ground. But the bread that they made there, it reminded me so much of my grandmother's bread.
Was it yeast bread, or was it sourdough based?
It was they did a white and a whole wheat yeasted sandwich loaf.
Okay.
And I think especially fresh, still a little warm, and the smell of it reminded me a lot of the loaves that my grandmother was making. And so none of my mom, her siblings, none of them were picking up any of grandma's recipes. So I thought, when I get back, I want to learn how to bake this stuff. So as my grandmother gets older and older, she's having trouble kneading the dough. Mm-hmm. Everything's getting a little harder, that we don't lose some of these recipes for our family. So that's what I did. And if nothing else, if that had been all that had happened with this, that would have been, a treasure unto itself, is just to spend some afternoons with my grandmother, baking with her and learning how to make some of these breads that she made.
So let me see if I have this right.
Yeah.
So you have this background and this context for making bread between your grandmother, and then when you went to England, you started to use that, and it brought a lot of people together. Then you ultimately move from the Twin Cities to Minot, and you're working for produce at a farmer's market, and you decide maybe me baking bread will make this stand out. That's pretty much where we're at, correct?
Exactly.
Now, before we even get to the bread part, you say you moved to town without knowing anybody. I'm assuming you're talking about you and your wife. And the farmer's market was a way not only to make some money and do something on the weekends, but you actually probably ended up meeting people there.
Yeah, and for me, so my wife still had some family here, and she grew up here, so she knew some folks. I didn't know anybody, and this was a way for me to build those connections, and maybe even build some of those connections through food and through baking and through bread, and that's exactly what happened.
That's what I love about farmers markets, without even realizing that was going to happen to me, because I was new to food and farmers markets when I started.
Mm-hmm.
I met a lot of people that are friends of mine to this day. And granted, I'm only about 3.5 years in, but it's opened up a whole new world for me.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the connections that we made. Some of these folks for sure are friends. A lot of them are longtime customers. I'm sure we've still got customers that were coming and checking us out in 2014. We have some people that very proudly, they were on the original bread subscription list when we started going year round. These folks have been with us for a long time. So it was a lifesaver for me, the way that this bread was kind of a road into some people's lives. So when that first farmer's market we showed up, I had 6 loaves of bread, and it took me all farmer's market to sell these 6 loaves of bread. But as I like to tell the story, Prairie Sky Bread started the second market when some of those people then came back.
Right.
And they were looking for more bread, but then they were telling me, like, I made this great sandwich. Here's what I did with it. Or like, this bread, we've got a big Air Force base just north of town. It reminded me of this bread that I got in Germany when I was stationed over there, and these open air farmers markets. And like, can you tell me a little bit more about that? That sounds really interesting. What were they selling over there in Germany? And then we just have these conversations, and yeah, pretty soon I'm making some connections. There's some familiar faces in town, and it doesn't feel like, I'm such a stranger in this new place.
Yeah. So how long did it take for it to catch on at the produce stand so that it would become its own thing and maybe, I'm assuming, your own bread booth?
Yeah, I think, even by week 2 or 3, I was hooked. I mean, I was loving the morning routine of getting up early, having that be the first thing that you're smelling, the first thing that you're seeing and working with in the morning. And then, just the social component of it and getting some of that feedback too, that people were really enjoying the bread. I knew that the next year I was going to have a bread stand. I was done with the produce thing. Things kicked, we started having bigger harvests. We had to do more work out in the fields, out in the gardens, and so I had to drop the bread after maybe the first month that we were there, and then it was just produce. But for me, I was hooked. And the next year, that's what I did. I got a rental kitchen space. Instead of bringing 12, 18 loaves of bread, now it's we're trying to get to 70, 80, 90, 100 loaves of bread, and that's all I was doing.
That's great. What are the laws to be a cottage baker in Minot, North Dakota, at a farmer's market?
Yeah, I mean, the big one is labeling. If you're baking out of a home kitchen, or I'd have to go back and look how it's worded, but even when I was in rental kitchen spaces, just making sure that everybody knows that this is not an inspected product that's coming out of a home environment. And so you're passing maybe that choice and that responsibility onto the customer. If they enjoy what you're doing, they know that this isn't coming from an inspected commercial kitchen. Then they might choose to go another direction.
Right.
But
did you have to file for a permit to be a home baker, and did you have to bag your bread?
No and no.
Okay.
We could have it open air when we showed up to market. And as far as registering, I think with liability and insurance stuff, that's all going to fall on the farmer's market. So we register with the market, and market's taking care of any of the sort of legal insurance state issues.
It's different here.
Yeah, it's not, I think I've heard some stories from some other baker friends from other states, and the ingredients that you can use, storage, transportation. There's a lot of things. North Dakota feels pretty wide open, in a lot of, which maybe isn't surprising, but yeah, for your listeners, yeah, it's a different game out here for farmers market.
Right? Did it change? I'm going to jump ahead for a second, then we'll go back. With COVID, did they change? Because I think we were allowed to, before I got into it, I started during the pandemic. I think before that we could sell our bread loose, which means not necessarily wrapped or bagged. But technically, you're not supposed to do that now. It's supposed to be bagged and labeled with all the ingredients, whether you're a home baker or a commercial processor.
Yeah. I think as a market, we've tried to, I'm currently on the market board, and we've tried to encourage people to maintain some of those health and safety practices that, sometimes they should have been around, probably some of these things before COVID, but certainly, once COVID kicked off, things kind of changed.
Yeah.
Got Zach rolling in here. But yeah, so I don't think our health inspector is going to be watching for that, but as a market, we've changed our policy to be a little bit more diligent about how people are handling and labeling some of their products.
So what were some of the challenges as you went from a dozen loaves of bread to 70? Because at that point, when you went to the 70, you went to a new place to bake, or were you baking at the same place? You did.
So when I started, it was just we had moved in with my mother-in-law. We were trying to find a place. So I was in their kitchen using, my mother-in-law's mixer and, making these just micro batches of bread. And, so then you're starting to become aware of equipment, what equipment works, what doesn't, and the size of things, and where the bottlenecks are. So I remember that first kitchen, the mixer, we could maybe make 12 to 16 loaves of bread.
That's pretty
mixer.
good.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a 20-quart mixer, probably.
Yeah, exactly. But then depending on the doughs you're making, I was learning that, okay, this mixer can handle, if we're making, any kind of sandwich bread, it's great. If we're trying to mix things up for our subscriptions and getting people different kinds of breads every week, a pretzel dough or something like, that we were making it was very, very low hydration and it was not, it was burning out the motor. So just the equipment was one thing, and then just the time of everything.
I still bake with a 20-quart mixer.
Oh man, they're great,
and I'm putting out well over 100 loaves. It's the only thing I know. I would be really interested in going to a 50, but then I need the oven space to match it.
Yeah, and that's I mean in baking, and I've heard you talk too about just your process in converting recipes, and
yes.
and I think for both of us, the science is not it's I'll speak for myself. It's not where I'm at. I'm trying to catch up to the science, and
so
as
am
I'm
I.
teaching classes. Yeah, it's just a little above where my brain's at. I like the art of it. I like the feeling of it. I like what it does in bringing people together around a table. I love in our baking room right now, we've got windows so we can see people that are enjoying that bread or that sandwich, those soups.
That's the best.
It's the best. It's
my dream is to design a bakery where it's open in the way a pizza place may have an open kitchen and you see the pizza oven, because that's such a part of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
To see the baking, it's to me they're kind of the same. I would love to have an open bakery.
Yeah, it was the best thing I ever asked for. When we were the first, it was a retrofitted building downtown that we ended up jumping ahead in the story getting into. But yeah, having those windows on the bake room so that we can see everybody out in the dining room, but then they can see what we're doing, and it's so much fun to have little kids coming up and just like peeking over the window and watching us shape rolls or make cinnamon rolls.
Now, I looked online and I saw some pictures. You're in a corner space?
Yeah, we're on a corner space on Central Avenue and First Street, so just one block off Main Street in downtown Minot.
So what is it, like a 3 or 4 story building, like a downtown?
Yeah, it's a weird building. The one that we're in, there's the main level, and then there's a basement level, which we're actually looking at maybe getting some space in, because we've kind of outgrown our space a little bit already. And by a little bit, maybe a lot of it. And then there's an attached building that used to be a 3-story hotel, and that was a restaurant, is now going to be a new restaurant with a bar and event space and all kinds of stuff. But we're just in one level. There's a few different spaces in that building, and we're one of them.
That's awesome. So the second year that you're in Minot, you have your own bread stand at the same market, and you're coming with about 70 loaves of bread.
Mm-hmm.
Is it one day a week?
It's one day a week. The farmers market's Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. We were just doing Saturday. That's all for some of the other life responsibilities I had. Because I dreamed about like maybe someday have a bakery, or this is a little bit more of a gig than it is now. But I knew that it was going to take me a while to get not only my baking legs under me, because this was, especially at this scale, was all still very new. But figuring out if I was going to do that, how do the finances work? What does staffing look like? Equipment, all that stuff. So this was like a 5-10 year plan from the get-go. If it was even going to be a thing, it was kind of a dream, something my wife and I would talk about. And, but yeah, so we were bringing 70 to 100 loaves of bread.
I have a question here. You talk about so you're talking about you and your wife. She's helping?
She is helping a little bit. Kids would come in once in a while, maybe help bag bread. But even at this point, maybe just some friends occasionally coming in to help bag bread, or maybe help me clean the kitchen, because I'm just spent from an all-night baking, and then farmers market and
so
thing.
I want to understand what your prep to show up with 70 loaves of bread on a Saturday. What had to happen during the week to get to that point?
I mean, I feel like, I think at that point, even we were starting to do some pre-orders. So we had some semblance of a website that people could go and put in some pre-orders so that we could have some maybe starting number for like, where and what people wanted. So maybe we'd make one or two different, maybe a white sandwich bread and a multi-grain sandwich bread. And then we'd do some yeasted rustic loaves or baking them. And I think that first year even I committed and bought 16 Dutch ovens so that we could bake them. Because that was just, I tried the steam in the oven and the ice cubes and all. And so now I'm moving when it's time to set up. So during the week, there's pre-orders, there's prepping, packaging, stamping, putting the ingredient labels on.
But no prepping dries, no advancing your mixes.
No, I mean, I should have been smarter and, scaled stuff out and got some stuff ready to go. But no, then I would just haul everything maybe at, as soon as they would let me get in. So maybe it would be 5 p.m. And I'm bringing in cooling racks and 16 Dutch ovens and bags of flour and all this stuff. In every rental kitchen we've been in, there's always been very little storage that we've been able to utilize. So it's mostly me hauling stuff in, getting everything set up, getting the ovens turned on. Sometimes I've come and I've mixed some kind of pre-ferment to get going earlier in the day. But sometimes need to get that going. And then it's leading up the prep is like setting up the schedule and trying to block off on a spreadsheet all these different doughs I'm going to try to be mixing and their schedules, how long it's going to take me to shape them, bake time. I got to preheat Dutch ovens. It's just this like, crazy multicolored spreadsheet. And I mean, it was to the point, Jim, where like, I'm not drinking water because I don't have time to go use the bathroom. Like it's not, it was ridiculous. Yeah. But the funny thing is that first year, we did get up to selling like 100 loaves of bread. And now we're starting to play around at this going year round where we're going to do subscriptions, which in Minot, North Dakota is a terrible idea. I don't recommend any place there's a lot of snow. You don't want to do year round deliveries. But I just remember that first year, at that point we're selling them for like $5 a loaf and I'm selling up maybe 100 loaves at a farmer's market. I'm thinking that I'm just king of the castle. This is so great. And I'm going to end the summer, right, with this amount of money that our family could use for like a little vacation or like something. And I feel like this is where like the realities of being an entrepreneur and a bakery owner kind of hit home is we got to the end of the season. I'm paying out some of my friends that have come in to help. I'm getting hit with that rent bill, which came at the end of the season. Some of the market fees. I purchased some equipment. And when I get to the end of the season, there's no money left. I didn't make any money doing this for that first season.
This is where I'm at with my food truck right now. You're exactly where I'm at.
I feel for you. I feel for all of us that, it's just, first of all, it's just not an industry where it's hard to make a living no matter what. And that's usually not why you're doing it. I know I've heard you talk about that on the podcast before, but it was, if we were going to grow this thing and if it was going to be ever something that was going to pay me to do it, I knew that at that point, I needed to learn a lot about what it was going to take to get this thing to the next level, if that was something that we even wanted to pursue. And even at that point, we got to this, we were in this middle space where if we were smaller, if it was just me, maybe baking out of my home, there was a chance to make some amount of money. Mm-hmm. And if we were larger and could bake in bigger batches and, I didn't know all the expenses that would come with that, but that seemed like a way to make money. But we were in this middle space where making more just meant that you had to stay there longer. Maybe you had to pay more people to come and help you. And you couldn't ever get ahead of that. You were never, profit margin wasn't changing.
When I first reached out to you, you were like, are you sure you want to talk to me? But
I still don't know why I'm talking to me, Jim.
I am where you were. I am in the middle space. And not that I knew that when I reached out to you.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, like, this is fascinating to me because I haven't made a decision on what to do, where to go, should I make the move. But I am exactly where you are describing.
Yeah. And it's because then it's, you got to make a choice. And it's, am I doing this for the love of baking? And maybe I want to just stay small. Have this community around this product that I'm making. There's a lot fewer headaches.
So for some, that's a great choice. There's nothing wrong with that choice.
Nothing wrong with that choice. There's so many advantages to that choice, and it's just a preference. It's what you are doing it for and what you want to get out of it. And there's a lot of days where, that's an appealing choice. There's a lot of headaches that come with scaling up. But
where do you even go to learn this next part? Because it's even less about, maybe it is the baking and the scaling and the scheduling of how to produce at that level, because obviously things have to change to the most efficient manner. But I don't know, outfitting the bakery, designing the bakery, scheduling employees, how many employees, like that, all that stuff I have no idea about, and I'm not sure where to go to even learn it.
Yeah. Well, I know it sounds like you've got some friends for sure in the restaurant industry, so they're going to be super helpful to talk to. It was weird too, because when I got to that point, I was in Minot, North Dakota, and if I was still back in the Twin Cities, there are more bakeries doing the kind of thing that we're trying to do. And so far in my experience, just bakers are so generous with recipes, with knowledge, with tips on equipment, with little tricks about how they get their doughs to do whatever. So to start that, I went out to the San Francisco Baking Institute for 1 week, doing like a sourdough breads class, because that was something that I knew I wanted to do more with and just didn't know enough about.
Got it.
So I did that, and while I was out there, they were super generous. I'm sure they get asked this all the time. I know they do. They've got a list of bakeries that if you want to go and just, like before class, to go in for a few hours, talk to the bakers, maybe hit up the bakery owner, see if they'll spend a little time with you. This is a list of bakeries that have said, sure, you can send students our way.
Cool. And where did you go?
Josie Miller, I know, is the one that stands out to me as the play. I think I went there twice, once just to eat and experience and talk to the staff a little bit, but he was generous enough. There's like 3 students that we went over there, and he sat down with us for like an hour and talked about his story, equipment, staffing, all kinds of stuff. And it was somebody who I followed up with as we were planning our own bakery build for some follow-up questions, and was so generous in the knowledge that he was willing to share. Coming back to Minot, then there weren't a lot of artisan bakeries around us. And so actually just looking on the map, besides going back to the Twin Cities, which I did one time, I actually went north to Canada to a few bakeries up there. And same thing, just talk to owners, talk to staff, talk to everybody that would give me a little bit of their time, and try to crack into what does it take to do this thing that I'm hoping to do, but feel so overwhelmed by the amount of decisions that have to happen. And if you get 1 or 2 of them wrong, if the size of your oven isn't right, and you've got this big mixer but this tiny oven or something, like, it's hard to recover from that.
Did you plan this out on paper?
Yeah, there's it's funny because I'm cleaning out our house and moving a couple times, I'll find pieces of paper from those years of planning where I'm literally making a list of every piece of equipment that we're going to need.
Right.
And the number of proofing baskets or, bread pans, the size of the oven. I remember our last rental kitchen and having conversation with oven reps, just putting, like taping off and putting what size we needed for the size loaves that we make. And then using that to kind of figure out what deck size we were going to have, and then ultimately the size of the oven that we were going to get. And we had the good fortune or challenge of the space that we moved into had just been made available. The exterior of the building had all been redone. The interior was kind of framed out or whatever, but we got to build out our own space, which is great because all of our equipment fits just the right way. So we didn't have to figure out some of our equipment size around some of the pre-existing maybe obstacles that would be in a different space. It was just a lot of spreadsheets and pen and paper and all that kind of stuff, figuring out what we were going to do.
That's great. So at this point, Prairie Sky Breads is open how many days a week?
Oh, we're open 6 days a week.
6 days a week. Today, Monday's the day off.
Monday's the day off.
All right. So
Except for a few people who are in prepping right now.
we've got some colleagues, some bakers here with us. Let's bring them in.
Hey, there's the team.
All right. So we've got the team. We've added Ramanda Nash and Zach Schuler.
Hi.
Hey.
Welcome, guys. How you doing?
Doing well.
Fantastic.
So, Ramanda, tell us what you do at Prairie Sky.
Oh, goodness. I'm responsible for the good tunes. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Hey, that's important. That's one of the reasons I love baking.
Yeah, crucial.
No, so I do whatever needs to be done. So just if I'm, I love to do the cinnamon rolls, caramel rolls, shaping of bread. Anything that needs to be done, just you need it done.
So how did this even happen? Did they just pull you off the street and say, get in here? Or do you have an interest and a background in baking?
Well, I've always had an interest and a background. I grew up baking, but I originally was up front making coffee, being a barista, and just working for the first time after years and years of being home with children. So I thought, oh, this would be a perfect job to get in. So I was making coffee, but as someone who has never drank coffee before, it was fun. And I loved being with the people and just learning about coffee and making it. But I was super jealous and had some FOMO being up front and watching them make amazing things back in the bake room, and me going I might be underutilized up here making coffee. So I would bug Travis all the time. Anytime he was up in the lobby in the front of house, I was asking him baking questions, asking him where he got started with it. So it just has always been something since I was a little kid. I'm one of the oldest of 5, and I just was raised as a kid of the 80s and 90s. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents in their home and did a lot of baking for my family since I was the oldest girl. So about 12 is when I started making bread on my own, and I just loved it. So got taught by my grandma, and I surpassed her so quick. She got so mad at me. But so, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Zach, tell us about what do you do at the bakery?
So I do a lot of the same things. Ramanda and I share a lot of responsibilities. So we'll take the breads after they've been mixed and kind of take care of them on their way to the oven. So we'll shape them, fold them, just keeping track of the numbers of what we have and how we're doing on our production schedule, making sure we're on track for that. But a lot of it is just that same, whatever the plan tells me I'm going to do, the plan made by Travis is what I'm going to do. Sometimes that's covering in the mixer. Sometimes that's running things up front. It's a very much a fill in where you're needed and do what's done.
Is there a consistency in terms of how breads are shaped? Or even, do you guys does everyone have to use a slap and fold method? Is there one way that you must make the bread, or does everyone come to it with something they know?
I would say that Travis trains us pretty well to do it the way that it is supposed to be. Because I think something that's important to all of us is a consistent product. When people come and they get a loaf of bread or they get a pastry, wanting them to know what they're going to get and be able to look forward to having the thing that they love and that they're used to. So I think it is important to us to do things a certain way. Of course, everyone has their own little
variations.
Yes.
Got our little spin on it. You can tell, I think we can tell who's shaped a loaf. I can look and be Travis shaped that loaf.
Yeah.
Zach shaped that loaf. I shaped that loaf. You can kind of tell.
And just having a conversation about what that looks like and how we might push each other in directions that make sure that we're still accomplishing the vision of Prairie Sky.
So who comes up with the structure for the week and lays out the schedule?
So I usually come up with the plan for the week, and that's sometimes based on special orders, pre-orders. Maybe there's special events coming up. We know we're gonna do a pop-up at the park in the summer that we're gonna need an extra, dozen loaves for sandwiches or whatever it is. We've got a pretty consistent plan based on some wholesale orders that we've got, and keeping our sandwich station stocked with certain products, never running out of cinnamon rolls, whatever it is. Kind of a rotation of, this is what a Tuesday almost always looks like. This is what a Wednesday almost always looks like. So it's just playing with the numbers usually. We'll throw in some different stuff every once in a while. And then usually every week I will put up the schedule. Here's kind of the plan for the week. And then Zach or Amanda will say, what about this? And I'll say, that's a really good point. I should add that back to the baking schedule because I forgot to add that. So it's been really helpful, especially as we've grown and some of my own responsibilities outside of just baking have grown, to have a lot of really skilled eyes on every part of the process. Because we all forget to set timers. We all forget to change the oven temp when we're going from, dinner rolls to sourdough or like whatever it is. And
that happens here too.
That's
just me.
It sounds like, a lot of people have the same challenges. But what's so great about our team right now is that everybody's really invested in the quality of the product. And so it's not, none of us are here and just, we're, here for the paycheck or whatever it is. We're looking around the bake room and have we, forgot anything, is, our oven temps where we want them, or, does the schedule look right? Or is that number, even if we've got the right product, doesn't look right? And so we've avoided a lot of big mistakes by having just a really good team.
Right. Now it sounds like you do have a lot of consistency and set accounts, wholesale accounts, but do you ever miss your estimate and end up with way too much left over at the end of a given day? Does it ever happen?
Oh yeah.
It still happens, because it happens to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially at farmers markets when you don't know, you've been told. It just happened. I tried one for the first time and it was recommended highly to me. And they're like, you're going to sell so much. So I baked aggressively and I didn't sell a lot.
Yeah. It's crushing. I think just last week we made a bunch of pretzels, which usually sell really well. And it's kind of the retail game. And some of it's just, you don't know why that particular day they didn't sell well. Sometimes you can point to something like, well, we sold the first few bags and then nobody restocked. We just forgot to ever bring them back up and nobody saw them and it was busy enough. Nobody came back to check. And so they never made it up front. And they just sat in the back and they didn't sell. But then there's days too where a lot of our special events where we do pop-ups somewhere, we just over prep. You don't want to run out of stuff when you're out there at an event. But if you got too much, then, what do you do with it? And it's hard.
I was on your website this morning and I wish I was on there before this weekend, because I ended up, one of my specialties is a prosciutto bread. It's infused with prosciutto and provolone and black pepper, and it usually sells very well. I had quite a bit left over, and I noticed you're doing pound bags of croutons for Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a good way for me to repurpose things.
Yeah. That would have been amazing stuffing.
Ooh,
great stuffing that would be.
Yeah. So and we don't always do croutons, but Thanksgiving coming up at this point, if we're certain breads, maybe we wouldn't turn into croutons, but we'll just throw stuff in the freezer for as long as we've got room. And then when we get closer to Thanksgiving, we'll pull them out and yeah.
Or we've done that with like a bread pudding. You save breads that don't sell them and then make an amazing bread pudding out of it.
That's something I love about Prairie's Guy is that we're very on top of like doing donations to local organizations with our excess food. So just donating to warming centers around town and things like that makes me feel good, even when like we do have that excess at the end of the day, which definitely feels a little bad to see your hard work kind of just sitting there. But
it happens. It happens to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, what is your favorite type of bread to bake and why?
I think it's got to be the sourdough. I think it being Travis's grandmother's starter makes it feel very personal whenever I'm doing a loaf of sourdough. I think the personality of the bread really comes through. I don't have a lot of background in baking in general. I'm a science background. I was a student at the university here and kind of just wandered into Prairie Sky Breads and loved the environment there. But getting to work with the breads and learning the language of like what the bread is trying to tell you when it's too tight, when it's too loose. The sourdough is very good for that. It's very open about communication about what's going on with it. So I really love it for that. It's just fun to work with.
That's great. Ramanda, I'm going to hit you with a tough one.
Okay.
What don't you all bake that you wish you did?
Oh.
That's the right person to have.
No, because I have project ADD, like ADHD. Like I want to do it all, but I know we can't. But I would love probably to do something like a croissant or something that challenges me as a baker, because that's kind of outside of my wheelhouse, just to push creativity a little bit more, because we do get into that little bit of a, we have a schedule, we have a thing that we need to stay on. So I miss being a little bit more creative in the bread making part. So I don't know. I feel like, just the creative aspect. There's things like,
I could relate to that. I'll tell you why. And I'm sure I know where you're all coming from on it. Everyone probably wants to do that.
Yeah.
With me, I don't have many people working for me. I do bring in, and they're not experienced. So I'll have someone from the high school come help me this day, and so I have to be on top of them. Mm-hmm. And I'm hitting consistent markets every week, and it just feels like there's no time. So I'm making the same 6-7 types of breads, and it's taking all the energy out of the world and all my time. And you're talking about croissants. I'm trying to go deep into pizza, which is outside my wheelhouse, but I'm trying to become really good at it. And there's just no time. Yeah. Like I just want to, but I do think it's, every once in a while to carve out time to do that, which is why I'm happy that my farmer's market season just ended. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go take a class in Florida and, learn some new things.
Oh, that'd be really great.
That's great. Yeah, it has been interesting to see in our own baking schedule, the seasonality of things, and getting through farmer's market is a huge thing. And when just the difference in the baking schedule, and for sure our weekend schedule, when that last market is over, then it does feel, until we get to the holidays, we've got a little bit of time to play and do some new things.
Exactly. Travis, where do you think Prairie Sky is going to be 5 years from now?
I think so far we've done a pretty good job of basically opening an entirely new business every year that we've been open. We opened 2 businesses our first year, because we opened in February of 2020, immediately got hit by the pandemic and had to kind of throw our business plan out and almost open kind of what felt like a new business for the remainder of that year. We've grown a lot. We jumped into the state fair. There's another big, it's called Hustfest. It's a Scandinavian heritage festival that draws so many people to our town, doing pastries and coffee for that. And then we just got an Airstream trailer that was retrofitted as a coffee shop that was running this summer. And that was huge. I mean, that really changed our numbers and added a lot of work to our plate. So I wouldn't mind if at least this next year we kind of just like did a normal year and see what that felt like.
I'm with you. I saw that Airstream and it intrigues me. Is the inside for service only?
Yeah. And it's really, we wanted to maybe try to do some sandwiches out of there, like some hot sandwiches, have a little panini press, but both just the electricity demand of the coffee stuff that's in there and just the space itself. It's really we just do coffee stuff out of there. We can send some cold sandwiches and stuff, but it's beautiful. People love it. People come out when they see it. So that's been really fun, but a lot of work.
I do the sandwiches on my trailer with propane pizza oven.
Yeah. I was actually inspired by some of the folks that you've been visiting with on the podcast. I'm just sort of like percolating on what would it look like to get an outdoor pizza set up, kind of a little mobile unit rolling. So I don't think for next summer, maybe, but maybe down the road, that would be something that would be really fun. But, in 5 years, I hope that we're really just doing a lot of what we're doing now, which is, it's the same reason I got into it, which is, connecting to the community. I hope that we're continuing to find ways to be fed by our community and the people that come in and really inspire us and cheerlead for us and keep us going. But, find those avenues that we can give back to the community and be, one of the many places in Minot. I know nobody's heard of Minot, North Dakota, but, like so many towns around the country, we, just great people. And there are some amazing businesses and artists and leaders that are here that just feel really privileged to just kind of be a part of the, the downtown and community conversation. And we hope that in 5 years, that's still where we're at.
That sounds great. It sounds like a beautiful thing. I love what you're doing. I love talking with all three of you. I am disappointed that the accents don't match Francis McDormand from Fargo.
I think we're all transplants.
Yeah, transplants. Yeah, we don't. There is every so often we've got somebody that comes on staff that's got kind of like the Fargo accent, and it is fantastic. It is beautiful.
All right, this has been a great conversation. I want to thank Travis, Ramanda, and Zach, and you've been listening to Bread for the People.
Hey, thanks, Jim.
This episode of Bread for the People was brought to you by Side Hustle Bread, Long Island's handcrafted artisanal bread company. Side Hustle Bread is a family-run business that's bringing the neighborhood feel back to Long Island one loaf at a time. If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to head on over to iTunes and rate and review this episode. Reviewing and rating is the most effective way to help us grow our audience. This episode was produced by Milestone TV and Film. I'm your host, Jim Serpico. Blessed be the bread, everyone.